About 2 weeks ago, I released a newsletter and it was called The Fortune in a Follow-Up System. And I don't know if I've ever received more responses because essentially what it did is it broke down a follow-up system, or at least a follow-up process that removes that ick, that discomfort that you have. And I know even myself, particularly before I left corporate sales, I sucked at follow-ups because I felt like I was convincing someone to do something or trying to push them into something that they'd already said no. So I would skip it. And then when I got into high ticket sales, I jumped at that opportunity because you have new leads coming in every day. And if you don't close them, on to the next. But what I've learned is there is genuinely a fortune in the follow-up system if you do it correctly. And you don't have to have that ick, that discomfort that you normally have when you're trying to follow someone up. You know, that salesman feeling of like, do I really want to talk to them? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to break down the newsletter. I'll start to go through it line by line in the beginning, but then I'll actually draw out the system that I use and essentially why it works. So I'll just share my screen for a second. Cool. So this is it, the Fortune in a Follow-Up System. So every Monday morning, late morning, I go to the same cafe, and it's usually where I'll write this newsletter, and I always get my coffee and get a rhubarb crumble. And this day was especially important and influenced obviously by what had happened the morning of and the Friday before. So the Friday before, I'd done 1 hour of follow-up calls, literally 1 hour. And I called leads that were not new. They'd been in the system 2 to 6 months, because sometimes when you're actually looking at the average life cycle of a prospect in a specific offer or in a specific niche, the probability of them closing on that first call or second call or even, third or fourth touch point is a lot lower than we think. And what I've noticed is, particularly with some offers, they might have to be in the system for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months on average for them to buy, which made me think, well, I'm ignoring a lot of these that have come through. What can I be doing better? How can I create a system so that they don't fall through the cracks? Because there genuinely is an absolute fortune there. So what I do is I create a scenario where if I do call them after the sale, it's like receiving a call from an old friend. I was never pushy. I was never uncomfortable. They didn't have that salesman or salesperson discomfort that most people do after a close call. So what I do on the call is I unpack these things here. What they want to do, why they want to do it, and how life changes on the back of them doing it. Then these two, especially important for the system, when they want to have it done by, and why that is the deadline. Now, this will be more relevant as I map it out, but sometimes you get on the call with the prospect and they genuinely still feel as though they can do it themselves. And I'm going to write a newsletter. It may have already been released by the time I share this video, on how to systematically unpack if someone feels as though they can do it themselves. But a lot of the time, we still can't get around that. Not a lot of the time, a good portion of the time. You're not ever going to close everyone on a call. I don't care what anyone says. There are always prospects that you're not going to be able to move. But we don't want to burn those leads because there is a very good probability that we'll get them through later. So my system, what I'll do is I will share the screen of my iPad and I'm going to draw some stuff out. And yes, I apologize in advance. My handwriting is horrific. I'll share why we need to do it and what it actually looks like. So, I'm not sure if that actually shared to the right screen. I think it did. Maybe not. Off. Okay, I'm going to have to stop the share. Oops. Stop sharing. And then just some technical difficulties. Give me 1 second. Screen 2. And cool. All right, you should be able to see that. So what we have here, this graph explains the majority of markets. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use it in order to map out essentially what happens in the high ticket space. And the reason that most companies, you'll see them, they'll go up, 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 and then they drop off a cliff. And I don't have to name any names. If you've been around for a little while, you've probably seen this happen multiple times. So what we actually see here, different points in the life cycle of a prospect and different types of prospects. So the innovators at the beginning, think about the kind of people that were going all in on AI 2.5 years ago. And then think about people that were going all in on Bitcoin. How many years ago? It was probably 10, 15 now, whatever that was. And now they are levels ahead. They are the kind of people that see a new opportunity and they see the potential in it and they jump on it. But these are also the people that see a new offer or a new niche or a new topic and they don't need a lot of convincing. They hop on the call, ask a couple of questions, and they are very comfortable with risk. So these are the kind of people that one call closes, they work really well. Now, your early adopters, most of them usually pretty comfortable with a one call close. Maybe they'll have a look on the website. Maybe they will have a conversation with you, 25 minutes, dot the I's, cross the T's, but they're pretty comfortable. And then you have the early majority. Now, these people here, they usually need a couple of touch points. So it's likely they're going to go through a normal funnel. They're going to see the ad, see the VSL. They're going to click on the call to action. They speak to someone on a set call, get relatively comfortable. And then by the time they get to the close call, if everything was done well before that, it's going to be pretty straightforward to get them across the line. So the problem with all of this, and you'll see this mirrors exactly what happens with a lot of companies. So they start very low and they build up really quickly and then they drop off. Because everyone on this side of the line, they're pretty comfortable with a one call close or a two call close or maybe a couple of touch points. But what about all of these people over here? That is a massive chunk. Everyone, essentially, to that side of the line, they aren't ready to go straight away. They do need a certain element of comfort. I don't like to say the word convincing because to sales, we don't want to be convincers, but they do take more for them to be comfortable. And they potentially are the kind of people who maybe they do feel as though they could do it themselves up until that point. Or maybe they do need to see a lot more. Or maybe they can't rush into things. Maybe they have a history of rushing into things and they've made a lot of mistakes. So they're a lot more careful now in what they actually do. Everyone in this section here, they are the people that a lot of them will need follow-up, particularly people in this section here, the laggards. They're going to need more than one touch point. And if you try and force them into a sale on the call, even when you've systematically pulled it apart and there's no logical reason as to why they shouldn't move forwards, instead of burning the leads, understand that you can drop them into a follow-up system. So how does this actually look in reality? So I'll go down a little bit, and if I draw out a nice and straight line, so here we have today. Oh gosh, it's terrible handwriting. Let me try again. I'm writing with the iPad on an angle. We have today, and then we have 6 months. So the example given in there is, say for example, they wanted to jump up to 400K in the next 6 months. So today they're at 100K. At the end of the day, that's not so bad. But they want to get to 400K in 6 months. So if we break this up into a few sections here, so you have 2 months, they should realistically be at 200K. And then at 4 months, they should realistically be at 300K. So if we break it up into sections like that, we have some timelines. But what we have up here, we have the goal timeline, and down here, we have the reality. The way I envision this to make it easy is think about the Olympics when you have the swimming races and you have the world record going along. You can tell when someone's about to break the world record because they are just ahead of that world record pace the whole way. So that's the pacing line. If they're lagging behind at certain points, and if they're a long way behind, it does become pretty clear pretty quickly that they're not actually going to hit that point. This is no different. So if we have a look at this here, so we can assume that at the 1 month mark, if we just go halfway between these two, it should be 150K. So what I do is I always leave the call on a really nice note. Make sure that they're comfortable, and I let them know that I'm probably going to reach out at some point in the future. And don't worry, I'm not going to hound you. I'm not going to be blowing up your phone. But if I see a resource, bit of information, something that you think might be helpful, are you happy if I send it across? Yeah, of course. I wish them well. The timelines can change depending on what you're selling. But for this example, this is pretty common. So what I'll do is at that 1 month mark, I'm going to send them a text message. And there's not going to be any ask involved. And all that message is just going to say, and let's say I spoke to Tony, for example. So it's just going to say, hey, Tony, hope you've been well. We recently did this training, or I saw this resource. I know you're trying to scale to the 400K per month. I saw this resource and I thought it might be helpful. Hope you're doing well. What Tony's going to do is he's going to think it's been 1 month since we've spoken. In his mind, he should know I should be about that 150 mark. But in reality, I'm still at my 100K. So the 1 month gap becomes this. Then I'll usually get a response. Hey, James, thanks for sending that across. Actually, quick question for you. The conversation has opened up again. At the worst, they reply and just say, hey, James, thanks for sending that across. Hope you're doing well as well. The 2 or 3 month mark, they can change depending on what's going on. So just for reference, at the end of every month, I go into the CRM and then I check the activity of people that were marked as a certain deal status. So people like this, when I go through the call, the deal status will be close call, no sale, -nurture. I don't like when companies set close call -lost because it implies that that lead actually is lost. Just because you didn't make a sale then doesn't mean that it's lost. So it will be close call, -no sale, -nurture. And then at the end of every month, I just run a report and I bring up everyone that's in that. And then I'll look at how active they've been. Now, if they've been super active, opening up a heap of things and getting involved, then I'm going to call them. And that's going to be at the 2 month mark. And what I'll do is I will call them, quick hello, hey Tony, how you doing? Good. Look, super quick call. We've actually got an event coming up next week and it's covering XYZ topic. I know you're trying to get to your 400K per month. I think it'll be really helpful. Do you want to bring some of your team along? And worst case scenario, they say no, but I really appreciate you thinking of me. But most of the time they'll say, yeah, actually, I'm sure I could send someone. How do I register? How do I go? And then I give them the details. I register the person. And then while I'm on the phone with them, hey, just quickly, what are we 2 months down now? On the way to the 400K, you'd be at about the 200K mark now, wouldn't you? And then they're forced to contrast. Well, actually, we're at about 110. Look, 10K is a good improvement. If you had to guess, what do you think the main reason is that you haven't been able to get to that marker, about the 200K mark, where on a perfect world you should be? And the majority of the time they'll say, I'm not really sure. I know you mentioned this on the call and this and this. And then the conversation opens up again. And on that phone call, you would be amazed at how many times that conversation leads to a sale. because then they're starting to realize there is no denying that, not there, I'll say here, there is no denying that gap from where they are to where they should be. Now, I said this is optional. If it gets to the 2-month mark, and instead of seeing them really active in the CRM, I see them not doing too much, what I'll do is I'll send them an email and then I'll send them a text. And the purpose of sending that text is, so if you haven't opened an email or marketing email from a company for a while, your promotions inbox, it will go to in your Google. I butchered that. So if you haven't opened an email from a certain company in a good amount of time, instead of it going to your inbox, it'll go to the promotions folder. So what I do is I send them an email, then I send them a text. So the email is just a resource, information, invite, something like that. It doesn't really matter. And then I send them a text saying, hey, Tony, I just sent you across a resource that I think will be really handy. Haven't heard from you in a little while. Hope everything's going well. I check that they actually open it. If they don't, I'll give them a call, say, hey, Tony, did you get a chance to see that resource I sent across? Yep, amazing. Just making sure you got it. Our emails are going to start coming into their inbox again because their email provider or inbox understands that, hey, I open emails from this person. And all we've got to do is get them to open 1 or 2 and it starts to swing. Conversation is still going. If they haven't been active, I usually do this call here at the 3-month mark. Now, you're probably understanding I've got a bit of a system working so far. At the 3-month mark, again, they're probably going to see a gap very similar to this. I find the majority of people turn around anywhere between the 3-month mark and the 1-month mark. They pretty much realize at that point, I'm not as capable as I thought I was. But it doesn't end there, because sometimes you don't get them there because we're not pushy, we're not over the top, they're still happy to speak to us. At the 4-month mark, it's an email. Just an email, here's a bit of resource, information. Hey, I actually connected with someone the other day, or someone very similar to you joined the program, and they were saying very similar things. It just reminded me of you. Maybe I could connect you. Small things like that. We're not pushy. We're not over the top. We don't make them uncomfortable. 5 months, very similar thing. Same process, just another touch point. Now the 6-month mark, I always call them on a Friday afternoon. The reason a Friday afternoon, they've had a big week. They're probably tired. They don't really feel like doing any of the big tasks that they probably should. And I do find that the majority of the time, they are more fatigued, their guard is down a bit more, and they're a lot more comfortable to have open and honest conversations. Not that they already wouldn't, but the Friday afternoon effect, it's real. And the reason I do that is at the 6-month mark, it is completely binary. Either they hit their 400K or they didn't. And what you find is the majority of the time at the 6-month mark, they're going to have a gap like this. They can't deny as to whether or not they made it. And the benefit is you told them in the beginning, by trying to help them out, all of the reasons that they may or may not be able to hit that amount at the 6-month mark. And what they usually do on that call, if you did it correctly, what are the main reasons that you weren't able to get to that 400K? Well, do you remember how you talked about sales? Yep. And getting the right team members? Yep. And this and this? Yep. All of those. Gotcha. So what's the plan now? How do you plan on turning that back around? Are you still going for the 400K, or have you had to settle for a lower amount? Conversation opens up them, and most often you're going to get a sale at that point. And worst case scenario, they still say no. Another 6 months is going to come around, and they're probably not going to get there anyway. And you are the consistent resource that is able to help them get to where they need to be. And the other side is you're still sending them testimonials, or they're seeing people that have worked with you in a much shorter period of time that have skyrocketed past them. So that's the basic premise of the follow-up system. It's really easy. You can set up all of these automations in the CRM so you don't actually have to think much about it. So the 1 month text is automated. The reminders at the end of the month, that's all automated. And the email sequences that go out, they can be automated as well. So there's very little work that you need to do, hence why it helps to be on top of your CRM, on top of your note-taking, and on top of your automations. I'm sure there's probably going to be some questions on the back of going through this. So send me a message, send me an email, whatever you want it to be, if you have any questions, and we'll go from there. So let's bring it together. Month 1, you send them a text message. No ask, just a resource. Open up the conversation again and have them realize there's a gap between where they should be and where they are. Month 2, if they haven't been active in the CRM, you send them an email and a text and a call if necessary, just to make sure that they're opening the emails again. Again, open up a conversation. We're not pushy. Month 3, phone call. Invite them to an event. Send them a free training. Send them anything that will get them re-engaged in the conversation. We're at the halfway mark. Are you halfway to where you need to go? What's the main reason for that? Month 4, month 5, touch points. Month 6, you are either there or you're not. So what about other niches? What if we want to apply it elsewhere? So say someone wants to lose 30 kilos before their wedding. You know that they've got 4 months to the wedding, or 30 kilos, we'll say 6 months. 6 months to the wedding, you can break it up in pretty nice increments all along the way. And as that wedding gets closer, if they're not losing the weight on plan, that deadline, that's coming, whether they like it or not. Or let's say, for example, someone wants to get to 100K passive income per year over the next 18 months. Call them in 3 months when they said they should have figured out Airbnb coaching. Or call them in 6 months when they should have figured out maybe YouTube automation. Whatever it needs to be. Reach out to them in increments, and they have to see this gap. And you're doing it in a way that it's not pushy, it's not uncomfortable, it's not salesy. And that's how you can continue to be in the conversations and not have people write you off. But the action steps for this: get really comfortable with your CRM. Set up automations so that 1 month text automatically goes out. So that 2 month email and text, that goes out regardless unless you change it based on their activity. 3 month mark, have a task pop up. I don't remember any of this. My CRM reminds me, hey, you've got to call Tony. It's been 3 months. Set up all of this so that the CRM does the heavy lifting for you.